that you should be not inattentive while worshipping the Lord, and especially in the chanting. And then he goes on to say that if one is chanting and still not attaining Krishna Prem, then this is because of pramad. So with this section, we discuss quite in detail about very important principles in our PowerPoint presentation of how this inattention is the root of all offenses. And we discussed how if one is meditating on the spiritual, there has to be these effects. One is humble, one is gaining attraction for the Lord, losing attraction for Maya. And we went on to discuss three important principles which we should imbibe in ourselves so that we can avoid inattention. One was to deeply inhale and chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra so that the mind is fixed in hearing the holy name. And the second was the Agya Chakra principle, if you remember. The Agya Chakra principle we discussed quite in detail, where we try to be inwards and try to focus in between the eyebrows and vibrate the mantra. And then the posture. If we are sitting in the right posture, and we can chant in the mode of goodness and attentively hear. So that was one discussion which we had. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on to describe what is pramad, what is the root meaning of pramad, and it is the root of all anarthas. And there are three kinds of pramad: audasina, jad, and vikshep. Now, again, with this discussion, we again quite elaborately discuss these three pramads, these three types of pramad: audasin, jad, and vikshep. And audasin, we mentioned apathy or indifference. We discussed these principles, the three principles which we should follow, which I already just briefly mentioned. And then to counteract them, sincerity, enthusiasm, and incessantly. So these are the three things by which we can counteract. And then this very important principle of the five states of the mind, and how one should come to the mode of goodness, ekagrata, so that one can attentively chant. And then the mandala, the opening and closing of the doors, how we should chant from the heart, and we should transcend these levels of consciousness where it is absorbed in the environment, on the body, on the senses and sense objects, then the inner senses and sense objects, the antakaran. Then we have to transcend the mind and go to the heart of the chanting. So this was very important principle, which also we discussed. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on to mention that as long as one has not attained anurag, deep attraction for chanting, one should chant the holy name very, very carefully. And in this context, again, in the slides, we discussed about how even Rupa Goswami in the Updeshamrit mentions that Kintu Adarat Anudinam Khalu Saiva Jishtat. With great adar, respect, and regularly one should chant, and slowly the taste for chanting will come. And then only we can enter into Raganuga Bhakti. So that is how the anarthas will be destroyed and we can enter into Raganuga Bhakti. And we explained how the mind, whatever it thinks, it acts. And there is karma, and there is action, there is reaction. And in this context, the whole cycle of action and reaction from Bhagavad Gita 4.18 to 4.24, we had a long, elaborate discussion. Now, the next theme, after explaining this, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, now one should carefully chant. Now, to carefully chant, one has to study his mind. And this is the theme, which is a very important theme from 11 to 15. And he explains how the heart is attracted to material things, and we are also chanting. So our mind or heart is going in one direction, the holy name is going in another direction. Even if one chants 1 lakh names, not even a drop of nectar he will experience. Why? Because of inattention, which is very difficult to stop, and the heart is attracted to material objects. So this is the root. And here in this context, how to study the heart. This is the very important sutra. When you chant, chant. Put your heart into your chanting. So this is a very, very important sutra we discussed in this context. In the next theme, Bhaktivinoda Thakur now starts dealing with how to chant carefully. He said one should chant very carefully. How one should chant carefully so that one can now become free from audasin, indifference, or apathy in chanting. Sit in association of sadhus and you will feel pacified and material desires will be destroyed, and one should chant the holy name in a secluded place. And in this context, we from the slides discussed in the last class the concept of sacred space. Now, sacred space is a very, very important concept, and we spent quite a lot time discussing this sacred space. It is both a physical space and an internal space where you can go internally and chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Now, one devotee after this discussion asked me a question that, yes, you were mentioning that even in our homes, we should have a particular place where we can get tuned into the chanting, so we can have Tulsi, the pictures of the deities, and we can sit there and chant and do only that one activity in that sacred space. So what about when we are in other places, or when we are traveling, we are in other temples? Yes, whenever we are in other places or we are in other temples or in a particular temple where we are regularly visiting, yes, we have to create this space within the temple also, where we are very careful to select a place where we can sit and attentively hear. If we are traveling, sometimes we'll have to see which is a sattvic place where I can sit and absorb myself. And doing some pranayam techniques, we should create that environment around, and then we can uh, get tuned into the chanting. So this is a very dynamic thing, the sacred space. There is one which we create for our bhajan, where we reside or where we regularly go for chanting in our temple. Also, it is dynamic in the sense that wherever we go, we'll have to create this space. And this is necessary, especially for practicing devotees. Those who are siddhas, who are transcendental, who are in transcendental consciousness, for them, it doesn't matter. They are absorbed in transcendental consciousness. So whether it is Vrindavan, the spiritual abode of Lord, or it is New York, where the hippies are residing, for them, it is in Vrindavan consciousness. Srila Prabhupada was in that kind of consciousness. So for them, it doesn't affect. But for sadhakas, because we are still battling with our anarthas, it is important that we create this sacred space. Now, this is where we had end our discussion in the last class. So we had discussed these verses. Firstly, this verse speaks about being associating with sadhus, and then the mind will become fixed in the holy name. Nirantara nama rase hoy ta adhire. Then one will be intoxicated in tasting the nectar of the holy name. The second important thing Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning in text 18 is staying near Tulsi Devi. Staying in a holy place of Lord Krishna's pastimes, associating with saintly devotees, and following the example of great saints, one gradually spends more and more time thinking of the holy name. Very soon, one abandons thinking of material sense objects. So, this root problem that the heart is attracted to material sense objects, the solution is given in text 16, 17, and 18. Now, especially staying near Tulsi Devi. This is recommended by Srila Prabhupada in the Chaitanya Charitamrit. In the Chaitanya Charitamrit, when the prostitute uh, was sent by Ramchandra Khan, I think, I don't recollect the name, to disturb Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, every day night she was visiting for 3 days, and Haridas Thakur was tuned to the holy name. And just hearing the holy name, her heart got purified. And then on the third day, she surrendered to Haridas Thakur. So what did Haridas Thakur give instruction? Stay in this place, and in front of the Tulsi, you chant. So this is the instruction Haridas Thakur gives. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrit, Srila Prabhupada mentions that chanting in front of Tulsi Devi is highly potent. In fact, one of the sannyasis was telling his own realization that sitting facing Tulsi Maharani and chanting, Tulsi Maharani has such great potency because she is the most dear devotee of the Lord. She will help you to attentively hear the mantra. She will help you to hear attentively the mantra. To make this a point, that if we are at home, have a secret space where you can have the Tulsi and the nice pictures of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and the deities' pictures where we can sit and chant the holy name. Of course, in the holy places, we can easily get tuned to the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and the holy association, and follow the example of the great saints. The great saints are the previous acharyas, how they executed their bhajan. Now, in the footnote, if you see, this is going to be another heavy drop of bomb. The great saints are who? Who are bhajananandis, who are absorbed in the bliss of devotional service. In the beginning, one chants the holy name for half an hour. Gradually, the chanting is increased to an hour. Then gradually, the chanting is increased to 2 hours. Then gradually, the chanting is increased to 1 lakh holy names, 64 rounds. And then it is gradually increased to 3 lakh. So this is what is the example Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very clearly prescribing. Now, this is too much for us to handle. But I would recommend start with half an hour. Half an hour, if we can sit in one place without moving, without any distractions, and just chant 4 rounds. If you remember, I told 4 rounds is 1 granthi. It's a hridaya granthi, the knot. This is a distraction of the train sound. So it's one hridaya granthi is cut. So make it a point to sit for half an hour, 30-35 minutes, and try to chant in one place 4 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And then gradually increase it to 1 hour. And then 2 hours. Now the 64 rounds and 192 rounds is too difficult for us, especially to do it daily. But whenever we get chance to attend retreats on the holy name, seminars on the holy name, definitely we get this chance to do 64 rounds there. Secondly, whenever there is Ekadasi, try to increase the rounds at least by 4. Instead of 16, we chant 20 or 24. Make it a point that you can every time maintain that vow also. And if we, during the retreats, chant 64 rounds attentively, then it will help us to chant our 16 rounds attentively every day. And as we get Namaruchi, then automatically the number, because of the quality, the quantity will increase. So this is the few points regarding this verse, text 18. Now we have, after discussing the sacred space, some of the important points with this theme, what we discussed, that is text 16 to 19, we'll discuss now. First is the concept of sacred space, which we have finished. Now, let us go through some of the points. The discipline of the previous saintly devotees is that they chant attentively for long periods of time. This should be emulated by the sincere students. Now, raise your hands. Who is able to sit in one stretch and chant 16 rounds? That is for 2 hours or 2 hours, 15 minutes. How many of you are able to do it in one stretch? Okay, there are 3 devotees who have raised hands. It's extremely good. 4 devotees, 5, 6. Yeah. Now, I said one stretch. You can lower your hands. Now, one stretch, 16 rounds, sitting, not getting up at all. Not getting up at all, just sitting in one place and sitting and chanting your full complete 16 rounds. Okay, there are 4 devotees. Excellent. So my own experience is that even I'm not able to, yeah, on chair is also okay. Uh, but sitting is the best, because in sitting you can absorb in hearing the Mahamantra. We discussed that sutra from the Vedanta Sutra, where it mentions only sitting in asana dhyan is possible, meditation is possible. So my own experience is that in one yatra we had gone to Sringeri, a holy place in South India, in Karnataka only. Oh, it's not audible. Just a minute. Sorry. So in this yatra, in this yatra, for 5 days, every day we were all together, and one stretch I was able to sit and chant 16 rounds, and the impact was tremendous. So this has rarely happened to me, frankly speaking. I usually sit and chant for one stretch 8 rounds at least, and I'm able to do for 16 rounds sitting one stretch without moving at all. But very rarely I'm doing that nowadays. It's only 8 rounds I do in one sitting, and then later on maybe sometimes another 8 rounds or 4 rounds, like that. If it is possible, we should do it, but try with first 4 rounds, then 8 rounds, then 12 and 16, or at least 12 rounds sitting in one stretch. If somebody can do every day sitting 16 rounds in one go, one stretch without any distraction, then that is excellent. It's really excellent. In fact, I'll tell you frankly, it has been the experience that it is not with the passage of time that after 1 hour is over, 1.5 hour is over, you feel more tired. In fact, your whole being, you feel it is, lifted up, and you feel more lighter and lighter, as though your whole body is lifted up. As the time duration increases, if you're feeling this experience that you have not feeling any pain of sitting for a long time, then actually the chanting, you have been taken over by the chanting. But our experience is that as 4 rounds we sit, then because the body starts giving us trouble, it becomes more and more difficult. 1 hour it becomes still more difficult. 1.5 hours it becomes still more difficult. After 2 hours it becomes still more difficult. But actually, if you're deeply absorbed in the chanting, you will not feel this. With the passage of the time, you're in such a position, especially if you're sitting in a sukhasana or a padmasana, you feel that you are in a higher level, as though you're leviating. You know what is leviating? There are yogis who can lift their body above the ground to a certain inch and just be in that situation. So you practically feel like that if you are deeply absorbed in the chanting. So this is the example of the previous acharyas, what is being discussed here. One can begin chanting for 1 hour, and then one should increase this chanting and attention in order to increase the taste for associating with the spiritual world. After all, how can one learn to love the lover if one does not know him, does not wish to spend time with him? This is not possible. So we can understand how much we have devotion to Krishna by how much time we spend with Krishna. And how much time we spend with Krishna depends on how much time we spend with chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So there is a story which is told by Bhakti Tirth Maharaj in one of his books on Harinam Chintamani, Reflections on Harinam Chintamani. He explains that once a yogi was sitting in meditation in the forest, and he was about to chant his Gayatri mantra, and it was early in the morning, and suddenly while he was trying to do his achaman and stay focused to do his Gayatri, he heard some sound in the forest, some sound, and he felt that maybe some tiger or animal is coming near him. And suddenly he saw that a lady rushed towards him at a high speed, and not only rushed towards him, she just passed over him, in fact, kicking him in his leg, on his thigh where you're sitting. Please, if you have to ask questions, raise your hands so that when we are discussing, it will not it will not disturb our thought flow. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. Don't type anything. Please raise your hands and ask. So she just literally kicked this yogi on the leg and immediately rushed inside the jungle. This yogi who was just planning to sit and do his Gayatri was very disturbed by this behavior of the lady. And somehow he sat in Gayatri, but he was thinking of this incident which had happened. What is this? How come this lady can do like this? So this thought was there in his mind, even while he was chanting his mantra and he's trying to meditate. After an hour or so, again he heard the same sound uh, in the forest of the leaves and all. Somebody is coming near him. And this time when he turned, he saw the lady. Now the lady saw the yogi, and in fact, she became very shy. And from far away, she offered obeisances to the yogi. Now this yogi was more disturbed. And she called the lady, and he called the lady and asked, I don't understand your behavior. Just an hour ago, you just rushed with such high speed and forget offering obeisances. You kicked me and went, and now you're very respectfully offering obeisances. what is your behavior? And this lady was shocked. She said, what? I kicked you? I absolutely have no idea. And then she said that actually, while coming, I was in the consciousness to meet my lover. I was absorbed in that consciousness. And now, when I'm coming back after I met my lover, I'm really conscious now. So please forgive me, Sahadu Mahatma, for committing this offense. And she offered obeisances, asking for forgiveness, and she left the place. Now, this yogi realized actually this lady was absorbed in the consciousness of the lover, so she was completely oblivious to everything in the surrounding. I was supposed to chant my Gayatri mantra or my mantra and meditate on my lover, the Lord, in the heart. But I was so much, taken aback with the external events which happened that I could not focus on my meditation. So this is the point that we have to uh, be absorbed, that we have fully, sorry, we have to be absorbed in such a way that we are not conscious of anything while chanting the holy name. So Srila Prabhupada, right in the Bhagavad Gita introduction, mentions that just like a chaste wife has a paramour, a lover outside the relationship of a marriage, um, she's very attentive to do all the household work, but she's always thinking that when I will go and meet my paramour. That is the consciousness she is in. Now, this example Prabhupada is giving to show that one who has love has deep attachment, deep attachment. So for sadhakas, this is the sutra that we don't have that love for Krishna. We have to admit it. We don't have that love. Otherwise, that attachment will come. This attachment comes only at the stage of asakti. So we can show that love by serving the Lord and by spending time in chanting. To achieve the goal of Krishna Prem, one may begin to chant for a minimum of 1 hour per day in the association of saintly devotees. But this period must increase to 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 9, and 9 and 10 hours per day. So this is what same Bhaktivinoda Thakur also had suggested. Now there is one question which I will take up. I just wanted to finish the discussion of what the yogi story is. Dr. Archana has asked a question: what a concept of loving God. First know him or her, then love. Huge message. uh, I don't understand the question. What exactly is the question? If you can ask, it will be better clear for me. What is the question, Mataji, exactly?
Prabhuji, Hari Om. No, it was not a question. It was just a comment.
Oh,
It was the take-home message for me. If you want to know any person in your life, so you have to know him or her, and then only you can love that person. So if this thing is
yes.
applied to God, so it is applied to your in your day-to-day life. So I was very happy with that quote.
Yeah, fine. So this, yes, we can know that how much we can love God by how much we time spend in chanting Hare Krishna. Yes. This is recommended by Srila Bhaktivinoda in order to sever all ties with material life. So why Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning? Because we have to cut all the material ties. Vidhyante hriday granthi, chindante sarva samshaya. Vidhyante hriday granthi. All the material ties to cut. We'll have to spend longer times in chanting, especially uh, the holy places like Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Jagannath Puri, which are very, very dear to Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And especially among the three, um, Jagannath Puri is very special. Jagannath Puri is very special because there uh, Haridas Thakur, in the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Bhajan Kutir, used to chant Nirantar Naam. So we can, whenever we get chance to go, especially to Jagannath Puri, we should make a point that 5 days I go and just sit in the Bhajan Kutir of Haridas Thakur, that is Siddha Bhakul, or the Bhajan Kutir of, the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, or especially the places where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates used to stay. His associates like Jagadanand Pandit, Sarup Damodar, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. These are the places where we should sit and chant the holy names. We should read also from the Chaitanya Charitamrita these pastimes, but we should sit and chant them for a long number of times. Once we had a Jagannath Puri Yatra, and after the Yatra, we had 2-3 days. So I requested all the devotees that let us 3 days spend chanting 64 rounds. 5 days, I said. Every day, 5 days, we'll sit and chant. We had 5 days break. We will sit and chant 64 rounds in Siddha Bakul. Now, none of the devotees agreed to this proposal. None of them agreed. They said, no, not 5 days. Only 1 day we'll chant. So I had to agree with them. And the last day, we sat and chanted 64 rounds. So especially Jagannath Puri has this potency where we can get tuned to the holy name and absorb ourselves in the holy name. Love for Krishna will not come about as long as one associates himself with his self, the body. So this is a very deep statement. Love for Krishna will not come about as long as one associates himself with his self, that is the body. The actual true self is Krishna. The true self is Krishna. I am part and parcel of Krishna. So we have to associate with the true self, who is part and parcel of Krishna. We have to become Krishna Mai. Just take a minute to think how important is that japa period. It is the time when you stop all activities of selfishness and focus on pleasing the Lord. This is a very important principle even in chanting, that I do chanting not in an achiever's mood, but in a receiver's mood. I chant to please Shri Radha and Krishna. This is the mood we should begin our chanting. And if we do this, then dealing with the mind, is somewhat taken care. But if you want to achieve, then the ahankar is going to give trouble. We are chanting in the mood of grace, to receive the grace of Nam Prabhu and the mercy of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. So when we do that, especially if we are doing it that I'm chanting to please Radha and Krishna, in this mood, if we do, this is like a receiver's mood. And the battle of the mind, especially because moment we start taking the holy name, Hare Krishna, immediately the false ego is attacked. And the false ego sends the mind, make sure don't hear the holy name, divert him in all directions. So that is how the false ego attacks when we start taking the name. But being in the receiver mode is like opening up the heart to receive the grace, and the grace flows from the higher realm to the lower realm. And in this mood, if we chant, then the false ego will revolt as it does all the times. Every activity concerning the self, rather the false self, should be stopped during the japa. Thus, japa becomes a selfless service. The mind, which is the center of all senses, should be withdrawn from the sense objects, and the consciousness should be taken inwards. So how to take the consciousness inwards, we discuss the mandala, the opening and the closing of the gates. So slowly, we should take chance. This is a principle we have discussed in the last class. In this way, the inner realities will increase their intensity and reality. At first, when one is on the offensive platform, progress is very slow, if at all. But with determined effort and blessing from the Vaishnavas, the offensive or inattentive platform can be overcome and one can reach the platform of shadow name chanted with faith. Shraddha, Chaya, Shraddha, Namabas. Shadow name, Chaya, shadow means Chaya, with faith, Shraddha. So here is a very important point which is being made. There are these three stages of chanting: Namaparad, Namabhas, Shuddhanam. Now, when one is on the Namaprad stage, progress is extremely slow. Progress is very slow in the Namaprad stage. But if we are very determined, if we get the mercy of the holy name, mercy of the Vaishnavas, in fact, we should be always begging to the Vaishnavas that please bless me that I can chant attentively. I have hardly come across devotees who ask for this benediction. Till now, I have met only two devotees who asked this benediction. One is a devotee in Bombay. Uh, when I met him, he sincerely, from the core of his heart, asked, please bless me that I can chant the holy name attentively. And I was really moved. And then another devotee in Nigadi also, a congregation. Both these are congregation devotees. And both these devotees, I could see that how attentively they were chanting. In fact, the devotee in Bombay is only holding japa seminars, and many devotees are connected to him, not only in India but abroad. So we have to ask blessings from the Vaishnavas so that we can uh, chant attentively. So when we cross this Namaprad stage, then we come to the platform of Namabhas stage. Now within Namabhas stage, it is called as Chaya Shraddha Namabhas. Abhas means Namabhas only. Now, those who have attended, especially the third chapter, which is called as Namabhas, I have discussed quite in detail. But for those who have not those who are not there in that discussion, I will just briefly explain what this is. Now we have these three stages of chanting: Namaprad, Namabhas, and Shuddhanam. So we have to go from the Namaprad stage to the Namabhas stage, and then from the Namabhas we have to go to the Shuddhanam stage. Now, within Namabhas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the third chapter, he explains there are two divisions. One is called as Shraddha Namabhas, and one is called as Ashraddha Namabhas. The name taken without faith, a glimpse of the holy name. And in this Ashraddha Namabhas, there is Sanket, Parihasya, Stoba, and Hela. And this is discussed in the Ajamil's pastime also. Sanket means uh, Ajamil chanted Narayan, indicating his son. Sanket means indicating someone else. So he did not know that he is chanting actually the name of the Lord. That is Ashraddha Namabhas actually. Then the example is of the Yavana who had gone to answer nature's call, and a boar, wild boar, attacked him and literally killed him. And he said, Haram, Haram, just before leaving, and he attained liberation. So he was taking Ha and Ram, which refers to the holy name of Lord Ram. He did not have faith in the holy name. So that is Ashraddha Namabhas Sanket. Parihasya means, when jokingly you chant. So all these categories fall in the Ashraddha Namabhas. In the Shraddha Namabhas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the third chapter has quite elaborately and philosophically explained that there are two types of Shraddha Namabhas, that is Chaya Namabhas and Pratibimba Namabhas. Now, Chaya is shadow, Pratibimba is reflection. And he explains how the um, Mayavadis who chant the holy name with the goal that I want to attain liberation, that is pratibimb. That is like a reflection of the sun on the water. It is very distorted. But chaya is shadow. A person standing in front of the sun, his shadow is following backside. So he, the person, and the shadow are connected. There is a connection. So this is called as chaya namabhas. So actually, we have to go through the stage of namaprad and come to the stage of chaya shraddha namabhas. And from chaya shraddha namabhas, we should come to the stage of shuddhanam. So this is the point which is being made here in this statement. So devotees who would like to know more about these divisions of namabhas, there's an entire chapter which is devoted uh, in the third chapter, and you can go through that. So there is one question. Okay. Please, if you have questions, raise your hands and ask the questions. Uh, do not type anything else in the chat box while we are having this discussion, because if you're typing in the chat box, you'll not be able to hear what is being spoken. Your attention will go in typing. So do not type anything in the chat box while we are having these discussions. If you have a question, raise your hand. Only if the audio is not clear, then you can type anything in the chat box. Okay, Maya Narsimha Prabhuji has a question. Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Dandavat Pranam Prabhu. Prabhuji, regarding the chanting and the sacred space things, Prabhuji, many times devotees emphasize on chanting with association of devotees. But I myself find more focused and more happy to chant alone. And especially like even Zoom chanting, and even in temple also, when I chant with other devotees together, I feel a little distracted because there is devotees doing some activities, moving here and there. So instead of that, I find more happy when I chant at my home, in my own sacred place. So is it kind of imitation, Prabhuji, or is it all right?
Okay, very nice question. Now, according to my experience and my understanding, usually one can chant in a secluded place when one is very, very advanced. One is very advanced in spiritual life, especially when somebody has ruchi, asakti, and all these stages, above stages. So only then it is possible that we can sit uh, in one place and chant. That is recommended for very, very advanced devotees. And Srila Prabhupada was not so much in favor. In fact, right in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada, he mentions about this. And another point which we brought out, which makes it very clear, is that when we sit in the association of devotees, we are getting distracted. And this means that Vikshepa is troubling us. Vikshepa is troubling us. But if we had that deep focus, no matter what kind of distractions are happening within the temple, what to speak within the temple, even if there is some other noise which is coming out, if we have deep focus in the chanting, we will not get distracted. It is a very important point to be noted. But if we are getting distracted, that means Vikshepa is still troubling us. And in fact, it is mentioned that one who has reached the stage of Nishta, he is free from Vikshep. And that's why, even if there are distractions, like suppose one is hearing the class and there are distractions outside, there is some noise coming from the generator or something like that. Even that noise which is coming, it will not register in his mind because he has taste in hearing Harikatha. He has taste in hearing Harikatha. So the distraction doesn't disturb his consciousness. But when the consciousness is very much material, the spiritual sound is coming here, and the material sound is coming from the other side. And because the consciousness is material, the consciousness goes towards the material sound vibration. And that is why you are feeling the distraction. Whereas if the consciousness is almost spiritual, I'm saying almost, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, then the consciousness is flowing towards Krishna Katha. And although these material vibrations are coming, the consciousness attention doesn't go in the material sound vibration. So this can happen only at the stage of Nishtha. So this is the most important point to be noted. Now, regarding my own experience, what I have found is that above our ashram is a terrace. And I like to sit in open spaces because it's more sattvic there. And there is Tulsi Maharani also there. And I also like to sit alone and chant. And another observation what I made, that the temple, as Srila Prabhupada says, is transcendental. There are association of devotees. And sometimes some devotees chant very loudly. In fact, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra should be chanted softly, but it is not possible in the beginning stages to chant softly because the mind is wandering here and there, and we chant loudly. So although I would like to chant softly, and I sit usually in devotees association, and I like to hear my own mantra, and sometimes devotees who are far off sitting also, I can hear their mantra. It is a distraction in one sense, but I prefer more to sit in the temple because temple is transcendental. So among the two, if you see, compared to the sattvic place on the terrace where Tulsi Maharani is there, and the temple in the association devotees in front of Tulsi, I have seen that chanting is more effective here. So this is my observation. Yes, but devotees, whenever they get an opportunity to especially chant in the temple, they should take that opportunity because temple is transcendental, no matter what. So that is very important. And in our house, we should create that sacred space uh, and then try to absorb ourselves in chanting. If we feel that temple is distraction, then still our consciousness, we have to work on it. Only those who are very, very advanced, they can sit in one place and chant, and they can experience the ecstasy in chanting. So this is my understanding. I hope my understanding, Prabhuji, it's clear.
Okay, Prabhuji, I'll try to assimilate what you said and try to focus more.
Right. Okay. So we go through this Namaprad and Chaya, Shraddha Namabas, and then Shuddhanam. And this is how we have to. Now, Prabhupada gave the example that at first chanting is a force thing. Now we are coming to that point. He said, I shout Hare Krishna and you listen. He is indicating that when we chant aloud, we must listen, even if we don't want to. Prabhupada said chanting at first is a force thing. So you remember, if you all have experience, we are talking and suddenly someone shouts. What happens? Our attention goes to that loud noise. So similarly, uh, I should be forced to hear the Hare Krishna mantra, and that's why I should chant loudly. And that's why we see sadhakas, many years, they uh, have to chant loudly in order to hear the Hare Krishna mantra. If we chant loud, we must hear something of the name. So in this way, the beginnings are not pure and smooth. But due to the mercy of Nam Prabhu, all anarthas can be overcome simply by concerted, determined efforts. One of my friend, devotee Brahmachari, was mentioning that for many years I'm chanting loudly, and I try chanting softly, but I cannot focus. I cannot hear the holy name. So that's why purposefully I chant loudly, he says. Yes, we should do this. Of course, those devotees who uh, cannot chant softly and be internally absorbed in hearing the Mahamantra, if they are chanting loudly, there should be a place in the temple where they can sit far off and chant. One. Secondly, those who would like to walk and chant, That also should be a separate space allotted, and there they can walk and chant, because even the movement of the feet, even that slight subtle sound, if somebody is sitting, uh, that can disturb him in his chanting. So we should avoid all these, but especially sitting in circles and chanting the japa and sitting, keeping tulsi in the center is a powerful technique for absorbing ourselves in chanting. In Mayapur temple, they do that. They keep uh, all around tulsis, at least in 5-10 places, both at the Prabhuji and Mataji side, and all devotees sit in circle and chant. Even in Chowpatty temple, within the temple hall, the devotees sit in circles and chant. And for those who want to walk and chant, there is another room, the next hall, that is called as the Gaur Nitai hall. There they are allowed to walk and chant for those who cannot sit for a long time. So it is important that we, those who feel a lot of distraction, that they chant at least loudly, at least they can hear some of the mantra, and then slowly get the mercy of Nama Prabhu. Later, however, bhajan becomes internal, and although remembrance is at first a process that is help from outside stimuli, that is via listening to the stories about Krishna's pastimes in the Bhagavatam, Shravanam, in time the Lord's pastimes manifest according to their own desire. So we could be anywhere, and the Lord may forcibly carry our heart and mind, causing us to jump like a madman, being elated from within. So bhajan, especially first, is external, and that's why we need external stimuli for us to be Krishna conscious. And the external stimuli is in the form of sound first, because everything begins from sound. We should, in the sadhaka stage, as far as possible, expose ourselves to spiritual stimuluses all the time, be it in our work, be it in our office, be it at home. We should have pictures of Krishna so that the eyes can be seeing the pictures of Krishna. We should hear the transcendental sound. So in and around, we should see that all the senses get spiritual sense objects, stimulus, so that the chitta, which is filled with unlimited impressions of material sense impressions, get quickly purified. Otherwise, the chitta will be attracted always to material stimulus. But as with the many years of chanting and hearing, in fact, hearing is very, very important. Over a long period of when we hear, hearing purifies our heart. It purifies our heart. And then what happens? Then the heart will naturally get attracted to spiritual sense, spiritual sense objects or spiritual stimulus. Now, this is an example of how the heart gets attracted, and suddenly it can, go into Krishna's world. There is a nice story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita which illustrates this perfectly. It goes as follows. One day, the royal physician named Mukinda Datta was attending to the king when a servant began to shade the king with a fan made of peacock feathers. Since seeing the peacock feathers, Mukunda suddenly went into ecstasy, remembering Lord Krishna. He subsequently fell off the podium and crashed to the floor in a state of ecstasy. So this pastime is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Mukunda was a physician, and when the king had called him, Mukunda was just checking the physician on the royal throne, and one of the servants was fanning. Just seeing the peacock feather, uh, it acted as a spiritual stimulus. The Mahabhagavats, for them, they are impelled by divine stimulus. Divine stimulus. Everything for them is a stimulus to remember Krishna. Stavar deki, jangam deki, na deki tara murti, sarvatra hoy ishtadeva spurti. So those who are in that divine consciousness, anything they see in connection with Krishna. And especially for Mukunda, when he saw this peacock feather, he went into ecstasy and he fell there and rolled down in the ground, and he was experiencing the Ashta Sattvic Vikars. And then he came back to consciousness. And the king asked, "What happened?" Then he said, "No, no, I have some epilepsy, and sometimes this happens." But the king could understand that this was not ordinary symptoms. The king, being very, very, sharp and shrewd, he could understand that Mukund is a very exalted devotee. These were not ordinary actions based on the bodily platform. So this can happen only when one is on the bhava and the prema stage, not somebody who is below that. This can only happen for those who are situated above bhava and prema. This pastime indicates that how one can be in any position and one may remember the Lord simply by seeing something that one connects with the Lord. As sadhakas, we should make it a point that we should try to uh, have, we cannot just seeing Krishna's peacock feather go into ecstasy. It's not possible. At least we'll remember Krishna. So we have these three levels. Uh, what is that? One is there is spontaneous attraction to sense objects. Now in the conditioned state, there is spontaneous attraction to sense objects. The sense objects naturally flow to the senses flow naturally to the sense objects. Spontaneous it is. From there, we have to come to regulated devotional service, sadhana bhakti, where the senses are being engaged in Krishna service. So from regulated devotional service, then we will come to spontaneous devotional service. So in spontaneous devotional service, the senses are attracted to spiritual objects, sense objects spontaneously. So from spontaneous sense attraction to Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, regulated devotional service, then we will come to the level of spontaneous devotional service. So this is a very long stage from regulated to spontaneous. So Vaidhi Raganuga Bhakti to Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. However, this state does not come about without prior connection with the Lord's holy name and pastimes for extended periods of time. So this cannot happen without being connected deeply to the holy name and pastimes for extended periods of time. At the stage of Chaya Shraddha Namabhas or Abhas, the anarthas begin to be removed. But the false ego is strong and will not want to let go of dominion so easily. The false ego has been dominating us since we are here in this creation from millions of lives. So although one might reach the stage of Chaya Shraddha Namabhas, the anarthas are being removed, which distract us. The anarthas are like clouds. These start getting removed. And the papa and the punya, shaya means destruction happens, so that we can experience the full potency of the holy name, which is like the spiritual sun. But still, the false ego is still very, very strong, even at this stage. Therefore, as the anarthas from previous lives are shown to you by the mercy of Shri Nam Prabhu, if you follow the dictations of the false ego, they will again attract your consciousness and try to exert dominion over you. Now, this statement is to be carefully meditated and understood. Actually, one who is chanting the holy name with full attention, the Nam Prabhu will show you on your mind screen all your previous sins you have committed, all your aparadhas you have committed, maybe in this life or even in the previous lives. It will be played on your mind screen. And when you see that how much my heart is dirty, you will cry out for shelter and mercy. This is the special grace of Nam Prabhu. If we are shown in the mind screen about all our sins we have committed in this life also, previous to coming to devotional life, or even in the previous lives. This can happen only by the mercy of Krishna and Nam Prabhu. So when we are shown, then what happens? Then we should not follow the dictations of the false ego. The consciousness might be still attracted uh, to the material domain. But if this happens, then slowly we will be able to surpass the false ego, avidya, avidya vinash. Avidya is the false ego, in fact. Now, let me give you this example to understand, because the inner, dirt in the heart is difficult for us to see now. Suppose you go out in a room and you see that room is very dirty. Externally, when you see the room is very dirty, if you are in the mode of goodness, first thing what you will do is to clean the room. Without cleaning the room, I will not go inside. So externally, when the room is dirty, you would not like to go inside the room and work there, because you are in the mode of goodness. Now, because these modes are there in the heart and our heart is dirty, we are not able to see that how much our heart is dirty, because the mind is being covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. But when the mind is situated in the mode of goodness, tada rajastamo bhava kamalobhadascheta chet eter anavidham stitvam satve prasidati. This is Bhagavatam 1 to 16 or 17. So when the modes of passion and ignorance are removed from the heart, when one is situated in goodness, one can see the heart. Oh, unlimited sins I have committed in this life. Then you cry out. And then the avidya can get destroyed. And then you can genuinely sing Amara Jivan Sada Pape Rata Nahi Koi Punyaralesh. This is a tongue of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which we should regularly meditate upon. Because right now we are not able to see within our own heart the anarthas, the sins, the pap which is there in our heart. That's why as a regular meditation, we should sing this song, bhajan. Prabhupada said, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that just like one sweeps the house every day to keep the house clean, so to sweep the heart, we should sing this bhajan, Amara Jivan. When this happens, you must take shelter of the Lord's devotees, who are the protectors on the road of bhakti, and not fall prey to the dictation of past anarthas. In fact, when you are shown in your mind screen all your previous sinful activities, now these are in the form of impressions. And now the false ego is trying his level best that you follow these dictations, whatever you did in these previous lives, previous activities, sinful activities, uh, you have been now shown in your mind screen. And in fact, the false ego is dictating that you succumb to this now. You fall back again into these activities. But one should not fall back to those anarthas which are being shown to you on the mind screen. One should not fall back. And one should take shelter of the Lord's devotees. And they are the protectors of the path of bhakti. And one should not fall dictation to these anarthas. This is very important for us. This is a very internal journey which is happening. And sometimes we also ourselves cannot fathom this. If you resist their pull and do not engage in illicit activity of any kind, including offending others, you will succeed in uprooting unwanted desires from the heart. So when these anarthas spring out and shown in the mind screen, you have to resist this. You have to resist it. Now, because these principles are very subtle, which are happening internally, it is sometimes difficult to understand. I'll give you a real-time example. One of the devotees whom I knew, uh, uh, he was very serious in his practice, and he was chanting very sincerely also. But somehow he was addicted to illicit activities previous to coming to Krishna consciousness. And what happened is, somehow he was trying to find too much fault with devotees, and he started offending devotees. And these are like anarthas which again spring back. So this devotee again went back into that same illicit activity, because these anarthas, when they come out, they can dictate you and they can push you in that direction. So in order to resist that push, we'll have to take shelter of the Lord's devotees, especially the pure devotees and the Lord's devotees who protect the path of bhakti. They are called as guardians on the path of bhakti. At the same time as this, you will also become immune to the attacks of unseen forces by the strength of your bhajan given by the mercy of Shri Nam Prabhu. As you meditate on the holy name, because you have stopped all external sensory activity, the mind will try its best to draw your attention away. Thus, when performing japa, your inner realities will try to overpower you and form an illusionary reality of past events combined with future speculations. So now actually your battle has become an inner battle. Sometimes the mind can take you into some illusion and play that illusion within as though it is a spiritual experience. And sometimes you can go into future speculations. So you have to avoid all this while even if you stop the sensory activities, external sensory activities. Within the mind driven by false ego, you can think in terms of the present, as the present is current only in the external world and perceived through the agency of the bodily senses. Therefore, your mind will continuously drag you between past events and future speculations combined, completely fabricating events that have no reality whatsoever. Why did that happen to me? Why did that devotee tell to me? All this, lamenting on the past events or some future speculations, when you're chanting, oh, if I'm investing in this business, we will have this, you know, this much amount of profit, even with respect to devotional service also it can happen. So future speculations, all this are all fabricated, schemes of the mind. For success, this must be ignored. Krishna says, whenever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, you should bring it back under the control of the self. Just bring it back and tell him, please hear the mantra. Sit and hear the mantra. That's it. No doing anything else. This is a very important instruction forming a part of Abhidheya, as the mind will try every trick to take your attention away from Sri Krishna Nam. The present moment is alive in Sri Krishna Nam, and when one accesses the real ego, one identifies oneself as the eternal servant of the Lord. To achieve this position, we have been given a technique from Srila Prabhupada. He says we should listen to the name and all of Krishna's pastimes will be revealed in time. So first listen to the name. This is a very important instruction, but we should also remember one important thing, that listening is an art that takes training to perfect. Listening is an art that takes training to perfect. Just to listen, just attentively listen, and while listening, don't come up with so many thoughts which come in the mind. Just hear, as it is said, empathetic hearing. So this is very, very important, just to hear others and not even framing opinions while he is speaking. Or now when we are giving the class, we hear attentively and not start forming our thoughts and asking or giving some comments about it. This is very, very difficult to overcome. So here is a last principle I'm giving here today in this class. While chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Remember, this is not Ram, it is Rama, Ra and Ma, 2 syllables. Simply chant one mantra at a time. This is in goodness. Not one before, not one after, and simply hear. Simply chant and simply hear one mantra at a time. We shall try to chant and hear one mantra at a time. Just focus on that one mantra, the present mantra you are chanting right now. This is chanting in the mode of goodness. So if we can follow this important sutra, then our chanting will be very, very effective. So I'll stop here. We have some more points, but we will stop here. Time is up. Oh, it's already, I did not realize. So any questions, any clarifications we have? Tomorrow we'll continue the discussion. Okay, so we'll stop here. Shri Harinam Chintamani ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Hare Krishna.